Okay, this is Jeff with DSHABUSE.com. Today's date is February 11th, 2020. The time is 9:35 a.m. I have on the phone a woman from with a son at Atascadero State Hospital. Can you identify yourself by your first name, please?
Bonnie.
Bonnie. And do you consent to being recorded?
Yes.
Okay. And you have a son at Atascadero. His name is, first name, please?
Scott.
And what is his commitment?
Well, 55 years.
No, he's a 2684, correct?
Oh, 2684. Yes, he is.
He's been at Atascadero for how long?
Since November the 7th, I believe, 2019.
Okay, and I believe he's a 2684, and he comes under the Coleman cases, as you understand it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you are an ADA. You have an ADA service dog. Can you please describe your ADA situation and how that came to be in your letter from family, just as you were describing to me earlier? Please go ahead.
I went to my counselor, my counselor authorized me to get a service dog. And I've been going to her and seeing her, and she recommended that I get a service dog. So she wrote a letter stating that I have the letter says here, my patient has significant health problems, which makes, no, that's not the right letter. I apologize for that. Sorry. Here it is here. Sorry for the delay. It says, Bonnie is a patient who's been under my care. I'm familiar with her history and with the functional limitations imposed by her disability. Due to her disability, I'm prescribing a service dog to assist her. Bonnie meets the definition of disability under the Americans with Disability Act, the Fair Housing and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So that's how
What's the date of that letter?
The date of the letter. Well, we have to renew the letter every 2 years. So this one was dated, I don't have the most current one right here, but it was dated, the most current one was dated in 2019.
Okay. Well,
this letter's dated 2017.
She's a licensed marriage and licensed
LMFT.
marriage and family therapist, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you've been visiting your son at 3 different state prisons for the last 4 years, and you've been taking your dog in those facilities, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And those facilities were?
Mule Creek State Prison, Salinas Valley State Prison, and California Men's Colony. And also most recently going to Atascadero State Hospital.
Okay, and that dog has become a part of your son's life, and can you describe how important that dog is to you? And I believe you had and visiting your son, and you had a suicide. Describe briefly that situation.
Well, actually, we've had the dog since he was 4 weeks old. He was originally our son's dog that was in the Army, and after he got out of the Army, he got this dog who was 4 weeks old at the time. And my son committed suicide, and on a weekend that we were away visiting my other son in prison, and visiting Scott in prison, we came home and found our son dead in our home, and he had taken his life, and the dog was there with him. He was 6 months old at the time, and he hadn't. Anyway, so that's part of the situation that happened that led to my disability. Okay,
so, and your dog's name is Scout, right?
Scout, correct.
And your son that's currently at Atascadero's name is Scott, so the name is very similar.
I know.
So not only is a dog very important to your life, but visiting your son Scott is very important to you. You can barely cope unless you see your son Scott at Atascadero. So I want to kind
of move this along. We've gone to great lengths to see our son every other week, as much as possible.
You live in Berkeley.
We've done that for years.
You live in the Bay Area.
Excuse me?
You live near Berkeley, California, right? And you travel all the way to Atascadero?
Yes. Yes,
okay,
it's a good 4 to 4.5 hour drive to visit our son every other week.
Okay.
And we do it all in one day. We get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, leave our house by 5, get down when he's at the prison, and we'd get down there at 9:15 for processing, and we don't get home till 7 o'clock at night.
Okay. And you were taking your dog to Atascadero You had a certain number of visits. How many visits did you have before there was an incident where the dog accidentally bit somebody in the visiting room real quickly?
You know, my son got there November 7th, and we actually visited him that very same next Thursday. And we've been taking him probably 4 times because the incident happened on January the 9th, and my son got there on November the 7th, thereabouts, and we started visiting him the next Thursday. So we've been there, you know, every other week basically. So we've gone at least 4 times prior to the incident.
Okay, we want to move quickly through the story. So can you briefly describe the situation where the dog accidentally bit somebody, your son was told he couldn't pet the dog, and then go through the story of the animal control clearing the dog and all that real quickly.
Okay, so to do it quickly, basically the first visit afterwards, my son was told that, and they did come over during our visit and said that my son could not touch the dog. And then after the visit, they told my son that the sergeant was really upset with him for touching the dog. And then since then, on January the 9th, when we've gone there, we went there, several people pet our dog that day, and we generally make a rule not to let anybody touch the service dog, but for some reason that day, people were touching him and petting him, and it was working out fine. In fact, the public relations man came out. He gave our dog a treat. He pet him. Another visitor sitting right there in our area pet the dog. And he said he's a big dog lover, and Scout was fine with him. And then an elderly man came and sat down, and he's from Scotland, and he's a nice person, but he pet the dog down from the forehead to the mouth. And even afterwards, one of the sergeants that said that it was on videotape said she would never let a person touch her dog that way. And I said, I didn't let him, he just did it. And then as our dog turned his head towards us, the man kind of did something to his neck or his ear, and our dog turned around and bit him on the thumb. And so they did give him some first aid to stop the bleeding, and then we took our dog out to our car. We did go in to visit our son. The man that was bit, he went in and visited his son, and he was very nice. He released the hospital from all responsibility. He said he did not want the dog blamed. He did not want anybody blamed, that it was an incident that happened, and he didn't want any money. He didn't want any harm to anybody, and he signed off that he didn't want to, any lawsuits or anything like that. No responsibility to DSH or to us. Since then, we have followed up with him 3 or 4 times. He did not need stitches. He said he's just fine. He's upset that they're not allowing the dog to visit. And since then, we did contact. I had to sign a letter saying that I would contact the San Luis Obispo Animal Control. We called them on our way home. They said since we do not live in San Luis Obispo, to contact our county animal control, which we did. They came out to our house. Our dog was very responsive to the officer. He said that it's a very difficult situation in hospitals and prisons, very unusual for service dogs. It's not easy. And on January the 20th, they came back out to our house and released the dog from quarantine. I called Lieutenant Cervantes the next day on the 21st, asked if our dog could come back, that he had signed off that our dog's off quarantine. He said no. He said it was 60 days. So he and I went through that. I said no. I was told 10. So he said he would check it out, which he must have, because it was 10 days, and he never brought that up again. He told me that if I visited on the 23rd without my dog, that I would not be allowed to bring my service dog back because I didn't need him. But that's under ADA, and I told him that, not his area of responsibility. I am the person with the disability, and I can decide if I want to have the dog or not that day, or be with my husband. So that, anyway, then he told me to call him the next day. So I called back, and he told me that he never said that he never said that I couldn't bring my dog back, that I can visit without my dog, and that he wanted me to call him back on the 30th. I called him back on the 30th.
So he changed his story.
He did. He had changed his story and said that he never said that to me, where he did say that to me on the phone. So when I called back on the 30th, Well, actually, he told me that I had to write a memo. He told me on the 23rd I had to write a memo to request my dog to be able to return to be a service dog. So I wrote the memo, took it to the hospital, and I also attached all kinds of ADA laws and regulations stating that all the different issues that had been brought up. I'd asked Lieutenant Cervantes if my husband and I could be accommodated to go through security together instead of separately because of the service dog, and he told me no, that would be denied. When I asked about my father, who's in a wheelchair, he said, of course, if somebody's in a wheelchair, we'll go ahead and accommodate with that. Two of you can go through. But I said, but not the service dog. And he said, no, not the service dog. I sent along ADA regulations stating that indeed they are supposed to accommodate any kind of person with a disability that falls under the ADA, and it includes in that people with service dogs. So I've sent all that information to them on the 23rd on overnight delivery. I called back on the 30th because I hadn't heard anything, and I wanted to visit on the next Monday, which was February the 3rd, so I wanted clearance with my dog. When I called on Thursday, the 30th, he said he had just received my letter, even though I sent it overnight on January the 23rd. He just received it on the 30th. And that he needed to review it. So he asked me to call him back on the 31st, which I did, and he told me that the chief of police and the director of the hospital had reviewed it, and they made the decision that the dog could not come back. Even though I have mentioned that we could muzzle the dog, even though Lieutenant Cervantes mentioned to me that if we did get to visit, we'd have to be in the visiting room attorney blast-off area, which I said was fine. So on the 31st, he told me that I would be receiving a letter from the director of the hospital or the chief of police very shortly. So, as mentioned, today is the 11th of February, and I still haven't received that letter. So I decided to contact...
How long has it been since you were told you would get that letter?
I was told that on Friday, the 31st of January, and today is February 11th.
So it's been almost 2 weeks.
Right. I haven't received the letter, but I decided to contact the state level in Sacramento, director of DSH, Department of State Hospitals. So I called that number, and I spoke with her assistant, Justin. He asked me to send a memo.
That's Justin Hitchcock.
Oh, Hitchcock, that's correct. And he asked me to send him on his email a memo or an email describing everything that happened with as much detail as I could remember. So I did send that email to him, and I received an email back from him. I think it was, the latter part of either the 5th, 6th, or 7th of February. So it was within a few days. And I sent that to him, and he said that he's received my memo, my information, and that I will be receiving a letter back for a decision within a week or two. And so, of course, to date, I haven't heard anything.
Right. Can you tell me, this is a very sad story because on several levels, I'm personally affected by it. Can you describe how this has affected you emotionally, over the period of weeks that you've gone through this? I know you mentioned not being able to sleep, having had this dog, having to go in without him, the suicide of your son. Can you describe how this affected you emotionally, how it's affected your son, Scott? Can you go into as much detail as possible how this has affected your life, how being treated this way by DSH? Versus how the prison allowed
affected me. It's extremely affected me emotionally. Excuse me. As I said to you earlier, I wake up during the middle of the night. I'm thinking about this. I can't go back to sleep. I have to get up. I've been very tearful. It's a big strain on me. We went back and visited once without Scout, and I felt very judged by them. I felt very uncomfortable, and there have been, every time I've gone there, they ask me, are you sure this is a service dog and not a comfort dog? And I have my letter from the doctor stating that I could have a service dog and then I have a disability that falls under the ADA. They ask me, are you sure you have an ADA disability? So I feel very judged by them, and I always answer yes. They want to know, what does the dog do for you? All I have to say is that he alerts me to my medical condition. That's what ADA has said. But they want to know how. How does he alert you? These are questions they're not supposed to ask me. So they put me through a lot of interrogation, it almost feels like, for having my service dog. So
are these police officers
very
that are doing this to you?
Huh?
Are these police officers that are asking these questions?
Yes, when I'm being processed through, yes. And even when the dog bite happened, there was a lot of questions about that. I didn't understand this. The Sergeant McDermott, I think her name is, I can get the name, but she said to me, they made us, after the visit where the dog bite happened.
Do you have the name written down?
Let me go get it, yeah. She said to me, when I was explaining, she said that both my husband and I had written a statement about what had happened, and she said and that we both denied seeing the bite. And I said, that's right, I didn't see the actual bite. And she said, well, we have you on video, and you're not being truthful. It shows that you saw the bite. And I said, well, I'd like to see the video because I did not see the bite. I might have been looking at the man, but he had such a strong accent. It was very hard to understand him, so I was looking at his face. But what difference does it make? We're not saying the bite didn't happen. It obviously happened. By the way, her name is Sergeant T as in, I don't know the first name, T as in Teresa. It says Sergeant T. McDermott.
T. McDermott.
Yeah, MC capital DERMOTT. So I felt very accused at that point by saying, what difference does it matter if I saw the bite or not? Because in my statement I said I didn't see it because I didn't see the bite happen. So, I felt that we've been treated very negatively from the very beginning when we've been going there. And my son, even though he's my service dog, I'll tell you what, having a service dog, even in any visit, when we were up at Mule Creek, a man came up to me and he said, I've been in prison 18 years and I have never seen a dog in 18 years, and I can't tell you what it does to my heart today. My son,
me too.
Having always been raised with dogs, we've always had one or two dogs always at all times. Having that dog there has been just a joy for him. It's brought, and he has a lot of mental health disabilities as well. And so it's been very important to him, extremely important to him to see the dog.
Exactly.
And I think it helps him mentally.
Yeah, we've had the same thing here. We had a pet program here, and I've been locked up 35 years, and the dog's coming here, occasionally, and it's just being able to hold. We don't have human contact here, and being able to hold the dog is just such a blessing. But what was it like for him? I imagine that dog. That dog visited for 4 years in prison. Having that dog come in the visiting room, and how dogs are, seeing him, and then being told he couldn't pet the, he was sent to Atascadero for treatment as a 2684, and I can just envision that dog going to the visiting room and wanting to just run up and jump in his lap, and being told he couldn't pet the dog, and he's there for treatment for 6 months as a 2684 under the Coleman case, as a Coleman patient. Coma case. What was it like for him being told he couldn't pet that dog? And what was all that like emotionally?
It's very hard emotionally because he gets angry. He doesn't understand why somebody would say that, and he gets very angry at the negativity and the frustration that he faces, and then we have to discuss it as well and try to calm him down, and the negativity that he received from them, and that in fact to the point that one of his staffers went down and spoke to the sheriff or to the sergeant and said there's no reason why he cannot touch the dog. There's nothing anywhere, rules or regulations, that say that you cannot touch the dog.
So does he have a violence problem?
Yeah,
you felt this had the potential to incite him towards violence, not being able to. You felt you had to calm him down.
Oh yeah, he calms down, but he's offended inside and he's angry inside, and it manifests in him that control that the police officers have over him over something.
Is he being medicated for that?
Yeah, he is on medication
for that for being angry and impulse issues
and stressfulness and exactly. Mhm.
Mm. Well, that's very sad.
The other piece of it is, too, I was thinking of something when you were saying that. Never mind, I can't think of it right now. But anyway, yes, it's affected him adversely as well. And, and really for no reason. There's no reason why they should be concerned if he touches the dog or it makes him feel happy inside.
One thing I want to clarify, you did offer to muzzle the dog.
Yes.
And they told you that even muzzling the dog, you couldn't bring the dog back, Cervantes. Is that correct?
You know what? He never brought up that specific issue, saying that even muzzling it. No, but I brought it up, but nothing's been said about it. And I also put that in the email to Hitchcock, the assistants. Yeah, that we would be happy to muzzle it. We'd be happy to go into this other room, whatever.
Yeah. Can you mention that about the attorney room? I don't think you mentioned that in the recording.
Okay. Well, Lieutenant Cervantes, in one of our phone conversations, I think it was sometime around the 20th or something like that. It was around the 20th. He told me that if we were able to come back and visit, that we would have to be in the visiting room. They have sectioned off glass visiting areas for attorney and their clients. There's about 3 or 4 of them in the room, and he said we would have to visit in one of those glassed-off areas. It has a table in it and chairs. And we said, that's fine. We're happy to do what's ever needed to make them feel more comfortable. When I asked if my husband and I could be processed through together, we were told no, even though that would seem to be a lot safer. As one person's holding the dog while they're trying to go through a metal detector, it's awfully hard to have a service dog and take your shoes off, go through a metal detector.
Right. And can you mention, I don't think you mentioned this in the recording, about the ADA policy in terms of a third person holding the dog as a handler?
Okay, and they had told me that we were on video by the fact that we had not, that the person, Lieutenant Cervantes told me that the person that has a disability has to be in control of the dog. And when I sent my memo, I attached ADA regulations. In fact, it says this: the ADA requires that service animals be under the control of the handler at all times. And that is what Lieutenant Cervantes said to me. But it continues to say, in most instances, the handler will be the individual with a disability or a third party who accompanies the individual with a disability, dated July 20th, 2015.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I can have my husband handle the dog because also both my husband and I went through training together.
Right. And the last thing I want to clarify, unless you have anything you want to add, is that in terms of petting the dog, there was one thing, 2 more things. One, in terms of him telling you the dog should be trained to sit in the corner. That again, he's not a police dog. He's not trained to do that. He was telling you that he should be able to train to sit in the corner while you went in the police through the metal detector. And also in terms of people petting the dog, he's a very friendly dog. The people pet him normally, and he doesn't bite people. He doesn't have a history of biting people. He's a mixed pit bull, but he's very friendly. Can you just address those issues?
Sure. Well, first of all, as far as the petting, I will say that they recommend that service dogs not allow people to pet them, and it's probably for this same situation. So, yes, while he is a very friendly dog, and that day in particular, when I came out of the bathroom, somebody walked up, and it was 2 of the construction workers, and they both pet him. They said they had dogs similar to him. And another lady that had been in the bathroom with me came out, and I turned around, and she was petting his head. So, right there, 3 people had pet him. We went down the hallway. We went and sat down, and another gentleman had pet the dog that was in our sitting area. And as I mentioned, their relations guy had come out, public relations man had come out, and he gave Scout a treat, and then he asked if he could pet him, and we said sure, so he pet him. So, really actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people had pet him that morning prior to the dog bite. So I don't know.
But he's
what
never
happened.
been anybody for. He's never been anybody for.
No,
correct.
and I will tell you that. This is important, that the animal control officer that came out to our house, he made sure that he said to us, he said, this is the first dog bite, and the dog is 9.5 years old. He said, we've never been out here for your dog before. And he said, there's no reason why he can't continue to be a service dog. There's no problem with that. And when they came out and released our dog on January 20th from quarantine, it was the same thing. There's no reason why he can't continue to be a service dog. It's the first and only dog bite.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I think we discussed that. We're kind of repeating that part of it. Now, the issue of the lieutenant telling you that he should be able to sit in the corner while you went through the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we kind of addressed that a little bit, but he did tell you that he should have been trained to sit in the corner and all that stuff, right?
Exactly, and my response is he's not a police dog. He's not trained to be as...
Right.
And
the only reason that I'm bringing this out is because I want to make the point that, every hospital has an ADA coordinator. And as a patient, and I kind of let you speak, I haven't interrupted, and I want to make a couple points here about how you were treated, that these are police officers that are dealing with you. And as I say, I run a website, DSHABUSE.com, and for people listening to this, I want to point out that you're coming to a facility, your son is sent, your son's doing like 20 years. He's sent there for mental health treatment, and you're going to a facility with a situation that they're not trained to deal with. They're having police officers interrogate you. They're having police officers say things to you that are cruel. They're not sensitive to your mental health condition, let alone your son's mental health condition. They're traumatizing you. They're traumatizing you as we speak. Okay, and they don't know the law. They don't know the ADA. They're making your condition worse. And it's very important to make these points. And so I just want to make sure we cover all the bases here. Is there anything you would like to say? We ran a little much longer than
I would like to say one more thing that I think is important. That when I was talking to Lieutenant Cervantes, and he told me that I would receive a letter, from the chief of police or the director of the hospital, letting me know the outcome and that I wouldn't be able to bring my dog back. I said I'd also like to have them include a copy of their rules and regulations that were written prior to the dog bite on January the 9th, 2020, that states that when a dog bites someone, they can't return to the hospital. Because
they don't have any. I guarantee you they don't have any.
He told me, Lieutenant told me, there are no regulations that state that.
They don't have any regulations. I'm here in Kalinga.
What are they basing? What are they?
I have the visiting regulations. I don't think there's any regulations for service dogs. These people don't think. Yeah, go ahead.
That's what I'm trying to state, is that if they don't have any regulations that they're basing their decision on, then how do they come about that decision legally?
Yeah, I didn't mean to overtalk you, but and let's clarify, because I didn't mean to overspeak you. But they have no regulations, correct?
Correct.
They have no regulations for service dogs. They have no regulations for service dogs, correct?
Correct.
Exactly. And
so that's why I think it's important that that's noted.
This is what I do. This is what I want the legislature. This is why I wanted to do this recording with you. This is why I'm at Kalinga, and this is why the legislature needs to go into these other state hospitals. This is why I'm grateful for you doing this recording. This is why it's important. And not only do I want you to speak with Galvin and Bean, who's responsible, I'm going to call them immediately, and I'm going to ask them to help you. I believe your situation will be resolved. But we need to let people know that the people who are running the Department of State hospitals, that these situations, that people are suffering, that people are dying, and the book Sex, Drugs, and Violence in the Department of State Hospitals by Dr. William E. is only the tip of the iceberg. And we need to make things better for everybody. I thank you. Is there anything you want to say before we end this?
Yeah, I actually did want to say one thing.
I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll say goodbye to you after. Is there anything else you want to say before I stop the recording?
Yes, just one more thing, and it's a little off topic, but it addresses ADA. My son was out at an exercise yard, and on the way back there was a gentleman, elderly, at least 70 or over, in a wheelchair. He couldn't have the strength to push over a little bump in the doorway. My son helped him over that, and then he rode him back to his unit. My son said in prison they have to have somebody pushing people in wheelchairs. There has to be somebody to push them, and I know one of my friends in prison, that's what her son did. Take people to their appointments, push them around. My son said at DSH there's no one to help these people in wheelchairs get from A to B, and that's illegal.
And he's observing that at
Yes.
Atascadero?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because that's an issue here at Kalinga, and I will follow up on that, and I will talk to your son further about that. Let me stop the recording here, okay?
Okay.
Again, this is we're stopping this recording at 10:05. The date is February 11th. Please stay on the line. Bonnie, I'm going to stop this recording.
Okay.